Hello everyone, my name is Rachel. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here for such an exciting video. We have some Christmas romance recommendations to talk about. I have a pretty healthy mix of historical romances and contemporary romances to talk about. I think I have like over 15 books to talk about. So hopefully you guys get some really great recommendations from this video. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and jump right on into it. So the first two books I have to talk about are not advertised as Christmas romances. The covers don't look like they even take place during the winter or anything like that, but they do center around the winter and Christmas time. So I did want to recommend these books to you. So first book I have to talk about is one of my top favorite historical romances of all time that I don't talk about nearly enough, and I really need to get a physical copy of this one because I love it so much. That is The Earl Takes All by Lorraine Heath. This is book 2 in, I believe it's the Hellions of Havisham series. And this is an insane plot. Like, Lorraine Heath is the queen of insane plots, plot twists, all the angst you could ever want. Oh my goodness. But basically we have these twins, Edward, and I can't remember his twin's name. Is it Albert? I think his name is Albert. And then we have Julia, our heroine. And so Julia has been married to Albert for quite some time, and she is now pregnant with their first child. But Edward and Albert go on this safari together, and Albert ends up being killed by a gorilla. Yeah, and the plot just gets crazier from there, like, just wait. So as he's dying, I think Albert makes Edward promise that he will pretend to be him when he goes back to the UK so that Julia can safely deliver her baby. So he does. He pretends to be his twin brother, and he ends up falling for Julia. So obviously there's a lot of angst, but what I will say is that it is revealed that Edward is Edward. Like, not too late in the book. Like, I would say maybe around like the halfway mark. Like, I don't think the author waits too long to have that be revealed. But this is a stunning romance novel, and there is a big chunk of this book that centers around winter and Christmas time. It was prominent enough for that to stick in my head in terms of Christmas romances. This is literally one of the most romantic books that I've ever read, and it's also one of those books where it seems impossible for there to be a happily ever after between these two characters, but at the very last second, Lorraine Heath makes it work. Next up, we have Make Me Yours by Melanie Harlow. This is book 2 in her Bellamy Creek series, and as you can see on the cover, it doesn't seem like it would be a Christmas romance at all, but actually this takes place over the course of both Thanksgiving and Christmas. So this is a friends to lovers romance. We have Cole, who is a single father. His daughter, I believe, is like 8 or 9, something like that. And then we have Cheyenne. They are neighbors, and I believe Cheyenne is his daughter's teacher, or like a past teacher, something like that. And they've been pining after each other for years, and one night Cheyenne gets drunk and accidentally sexts Cole, and he replies, and he seems to be really into it, and so that ends up in them having really hot phone sex. And that's all you need to know about this plot, really. Melanie Harlow does a fantastic job of writing sexy small town romances, and the fact that it takes place around Christmas time is just an added bonus. So next we are going to get into actual Christmas romances. First up, we have A Wallflower Christmas by Lisa Kleypas. So this is a novella in the Wallflowers series. So this novella takes place after the events of the 4 main books of the series. So I would highly recommend reading those books first before jumping into this novella, just because I feel like you won't have the same attachment to these characters if you don't read their stories first. So this kind of gives me vibes of like a historical romance version of A Court of Frost and Starlight by Sarah J. Maas, in that part of this novella is just us hanging out with the Wallflower gang, just seeing scenes of them decorating, I think, Lillian's house for Christmas and just Christmas shenanigans. But there is also a romance in this, and that is between Rafe, who is the brother of one of the Wallflowers. I want to say he is Lillian and Daisy's brother. And so he has come to London. I believe he is courting this woman, and the heroine ends up being that woman's ladies' companion. I love a historical romance with a ladies' companion. I don't know why, that's just a vibe for me. So I actually really enjoyed the romance in this. I would have read an entire book about this couple. It was a bit insta-lovey just because the story had to be told, you know, in not a lot of page time, but I think overall it was very well done, and I loved spending time with our favorite Wallflower characters. I think I'm gonna just jump around between historicals and contemporary romances. Next up, we have Gifting Me to His Best Friend by Katie Robert. This is book 2 in her Touch of Taboo series. You definitely do not need to read these books in order. I don't think they have any connections between them. The only connection is that they are a touch of taboo. And these novellas are seriously some of the hottest books that I have ever read. Book 1 of this series, Your Dad Will Do, is like the filthiest book I've ever read. Oh my goodness. And this is a very close second. This is a poly romance actually between, we have Grayson and Emma. They are married. And then Derek, who is their best friend, basically they end up spending time together over the Christmas holidays at, I think it's Grayson and Emma's cabin. And so to fulfill one of Emma's fantasies, because Grayson and Emma are really into kink, they decide to invite Derek into the bedroom with them, and things go on from there. This does have a happily ever after with the 3 of them, which I really enjoyed. And yeah, this was just insanely hot. Next up, we have The Lights on Knockbridge Lane. This is by Roan Parrish, and this is technically book 2 in the Garnet Run series, though I never read book 1 and I don't think you need to. But this is seriously the sweetest and most adorable MM romance ever. This gave me vibes of a Hallmark movie, but this is so much better than a Hallmark Christmas movie. This is about Adam and Wes. So Adam is a single father, and I believe him and his husband split up, and his husband wanted nothing to do with their daughter, so he's no longer involved in either of their lives. So they now move to this small town, and Wes lives across the street. He is a reclusive scientist. So this is kind of an opposites attract romance, because Adam, I remember, he's definitely much more of an extrovert, and Wes is definitely more subdued and quiet. And this was just an absolutely adorable neighbor romance. And Adam's daughter is hilarious and adorable as well. And this is kind of random, but this book actually made me believe that tarantula spiders are adorable. And you're just gonna have to read the book to understand what I'm talking about. Next up, we have Her Virgin Duke by my historical erotic romance queen, Nicola Davidson. This features, of course, a virgin hero, as you can tell by the title. So we have Bennett, who is in his mid-20s, and then Delilah, who I think she's in her 30s, and she owns a pleasure club. So basically, because of a dare, Bennett ends up going to Delilah's pleasure club. And so the second they meet, they have insane chemistry, and this kind of has like a lessons in seduction vibe. I think she kind of starts teaching him about pleasure, but they soon realize that Bennett is a dom. So Bennett is a total cinedom hero. He is a cinnamon roll sweetheart in the streets, a dom in the sheets. We love that, you know? So this was just hot. I highly recommend it. But there is also a really great emotional connection between the two of them as well. Next up, we have Miracle on Ladies' Mile by Joanna Shupe. This is a Gilded Age romance novella about Alex and Grace. So Alex is the owner of a department store. Grace works at said department store. And this was just really sweet and sexy. Lots of angst for sure as well. Alex is a single father, which I don't think Joanna Shupe has ever written any other romance where there's a single parent involved, but this was really well done. Not my absolute favorite book by Joanna Shupe, but very solid. Definitely has those cozy Christmas vibes, and I love the mix of Christmas with Gilded Age New York. I love that vibe so much. Next up, we have The Captain's Midwinter Bride by Liana de la Rosa. This is also a historical romance novella that is also a marriage in trouble. We have Philip, who's a captain, and Annalise. So this is at a point in their marriage, I think they're both in their like early to mid 40s, if I'm not mistaken. They had a couple of kids together after they got married, and since then he hasn't really been around. He's kind of been off at sea doing his job. And so Annalise has pretty much raised their kids on her own. And so now they're all reuniting because their daughter is getting married. And so this is just about the two of them fixing their marriage and falling in love all over again. This was just really sweet and really sexy. I gave it 4 stars. Next up, we have When She Was Naughty by Tessa Dare. Oh my God, this is a fantastic Christmas themed historical romance novella. So we have Chloe and Justin, and through misunderstandings over the years, Chloe thinks that Justin hates her when in reality he's just awkward around her because he's insanely in love with her and obsessed with her. But she decides to play a prank on him, and her family holds an annual like Christmas Eve ball, and so she tells Justin that for this ball all of the men wear ugly Christmas waistcoats, kind of along the lines of an ugly Christmas sweater. And so she makes an ugly Christmas waistcoat for him, puts all kinds of things all over it and sends it over to him, and he ends up wearing it to the ball. He's understandably so embarrassed, and through that they both realize that they have truly loved each other their entire lives. And this was just really sweet and adorable. There's no steam in this because this is a pretty short novella and it does end kind of abruptly, but the vibe is just perfect. And it's Tessa Dare. Like, come on, it's gonna be a fun time, you know? So highly recommend this one, even though I wish it would have been a bit longer. Next up, we have The Gift by Cassie Mint. So Cassie Mint is one of my top favorite romance novella authors, and this is one of my absolute top favorites by her. So this is about Elizabeth and Alexei. This takes place, I think, in Antarctica or just a very remote area of the world where it is like winter all the time, basically. And so she is a post office worker. She is in charge of getting all of the mail to all of the people in this very small town. Alexei is a scientist who has been living there for a few years, and they both have been pining after each other for such a long time. And one of the things I loved is that both the hero and heroine are virgins, and they're just both very shy and very sweet to each other. And the whole catalyst for this story is that Elizabeth decides to give herself to Alexei for Christmas. That's all you need to know. This is just a wonderful, wonderful novella for sure. Next up, we have Mistletoe Motive by Chloe Leese. I read this back in January of this year and I loved it so much. This is another novella. It's like a 5-hour audiobook. You'll absolutely fly through it. This has the vibe of You've Got Mail for sure. And this has great neurodivergent representation, as well as the heroine is demisexual. But this is an enemies to lovers romance, maybe more like business rivals to lovers maybe, between Jonathan and Gabriella, I believe is the heroine's name. They both work at this small bookshop together. And I think what's going on is they think one of them is gonna get laid off at the end of the year, so now they're fighting to stay on at this bookshop. Meanwhile, the two of them are falling for each other online, like through instant messaging or like a forum, something like that. So that's where the You've Got Mail vibe comes into play. This was adorable, sweet, sexy, like everything you could want from a Christmas romance. The vibe was just perfect for me. Next up, we have The Naughty List by Ellie Mae McGregor. I love this author's novellas. She only has, I think, 2 novellas out at the moment, but I enjoyed both of them so much. So this one is like a sexy Santa novella. We have Nikolai. He seems to be in his 40s, and our heroine Kate is also in her early 40s, and she's a single mother. And so this is just a romance where Nikolai shows up to drop off presents for her kids, and sexy times ensue between the two of them, and they fall for each other. And this was just the epitome of adorable and sexy at the same time. This is just a whole vibe. Definitely unique in terms of romances that I've read, because I haven't read very many like Santa kind of romances. So yeah, this was just fun. Next up, we have Walking in a Witchy Wonderland by Juliet Cross. This is a bind up of novellas that takes place around Christmas time, and I would only recommend reading this bind up if you are a fan of the Stay a Spell series and you've read the first 3 novels, because in the order of the series you have Wolf Gone Wild, Don't Hex and Drive, Witches Get Stitches, and then this bind up. And this was just adorable. I think there's 3 novellas if I'm not mistaken. One of the novellas was the romance between Charlie and I can't remember the other hero's name, but they're friends of the Savoy sisters who are like the main characters of the series. So I loved having an MM romance in this series. One of the other novellas was like a prequel novella to Livy and Gareth's story, and then the third novella was about Nico and Violet. That novella I didn't really love because that was all about the 2 of them like discussing having kids, and I do not give a shit about kids, especially in romance novels. But the other 2 novellas were really, really great. Just had really fun, cozy Christmas vibes. All right, so last but not least, I have a small stack of books that I own physically that I want to recommend to you guys. First up is How the Duke Stole Christmas. This is a bind up of Christmas historical romance novellas by Tessa Dare, Sarah McLean, Sophie Jordan, and Joanna Shoup. One of the things that I adore about this bind up, and I've read it twice at this point, is that each novella is based on a different Christmas movie or Christmas novel of some kind. So for instance, Meet Me in Mayfair by Tessa Dare is based on Meet Me in St. Louis. The Duke of Christmas Present by Sarah McLean obviously is a Christmas Carol retelling. We have Heiress Alone by Sophie Jordan, which is like a Home Alone retelling. And then we have Christmas in Central Park by Joanna Shoup, and I can't remember what movie this is based off of. It was kind of an obscure Christmas movie. If I find it while editing, I'll put the title here, but I cannot remember. I think my personal favorite novella of this bind up is Heiress Alone by Sophie Jordan. This is about our heroine being stranded in the Scottish Highlands during a Christmas snowstorm, and the hero is their next door neighbor, who is this hermit duke who basically saves her from freezing to death. And yeah, wonderful. But I truly enjoyed all 4 of these novellas. Just such a fun time. Next up, we have another bind up of Christmas historical romance novellas that I truly enjoyed. This is Kissing Under the Mistletoe. This is by Suzanne Enoch, Amelia Gray, and Anna Bennett. My personal favorite novella of this bind up was My Mistletoe Beau by Anna Bennett. This kind of had like an enemies to lovers vibe, and it was fake dating as well. I almost gave that novella 5 stars. Really, really loved it. And I also enjoyed the other 2 novellas as well. This just gave me all the cozy Christmas historical romance vibes that I needed. Then I have some more contemporary romances to recommend. First of all, we have Window Shopping by Tessa Bailey. One of my favorite romances that I read last year. I absolutely adored this. This definitely has a unique plot and vibe to it. We have Aiden, who is the manager of this department store called Vivant. And then we have Stella, who is having a tough time. She recently got out of prison, and you know, once you have a criminal record, it's very hard to find jobs and housing and all of those things. And so Aiden comes across her randomly when she's looking at one of the window displays at Vivant, and he asks her opinion on it, and she's very honest with him, and he is just charmed by her. And she seems to have some experience with window displays, and so he just hires her on the spot. Aiden is such a quirky and funny hero, but he is a total Cinedom. He is sweet and funny in the streets and a total dom in the sheets. And like I've already stated in this video, that is like my favorite type of hero. He's absolutely everything. I haven't watched this show, but I have heard him compared to Ted Lasso. So if that appeals to you as well, I definitely would recommend checking this out. Definitely has heavier themes to it because, like I said, Stella has just gotten out of prison, and that is discussed quite a lot throughout the book. But I was just addicted to the story from the first few pages. I loved it so much. Next up, I have a couple of Christmas romances by Jenny Holiday. These are both a part of the same romance series. So first up, we have A Princess for Christmas, and this totally gave me vibes of like those Netflix Christmas movies. I'm thinking movies like A Prince for Christmas as well as The Princess Switch. I got that same kind of vibe from these books, but these books are so much better than those movies. But this one is about Leo. he's from the Bronx. He's living his life. He is raising his younger sister, and he's a taxi driver. And then we have Princess Marie of Eldovia, and she is in New York City for some diplomacy events, things like that. And they first meet when Marie desperately needs to get across town, and Leo is the only one around that can help her out. This was just absolutely adorable. We'll give you all those cozy Christmas vibes. But Jenny Holiday serves with the spice and the steam. So highly recommend these books if you are looking for those Hallmark Christmas movie vibes, but you also enjoy some steam in your romances. And so then the second book in the same series is called Duke Actually, and this one is about Max and Danny. This one has a grumpy heroine, sunshiny, flirty hero vibe, and this one was really fun as well. This one is a friends to lovers romance, definitely very slow burn. The steam doesn't kick in until like 85% of the way through, but let's just say that Jenny Holiday makes it worth it. There is a scene in this that still lives in my head rent-free. It's wonderful. And last but not least, I thought I would mention A Very Merry Bromance by Lyssa Kay Adams. This came out on November 1st, so pretty recently, and I did end up enjoying this. I gave it 4 stars. This is not my absolute favorite book of the series, but this was a very solid Christmas romance. This one is about Gretchen, our heroine. This definitely has like an icy, grumpy heroine vibe to it. And Colton Wheeler, who's a famous country singer, he's definitely more of a sunshiny hero. If you don't know anything about the Bromance Book Club series, this centers around a book club of men who read romance novels to better understand their partners. And so the book that they pick during the course of this story is a Christmas romance, as you can kind of see here, which is adorable. And I really liked how Colton got Gretchen into reading romance novels throughout the story. And he also took her on some really cute Christmassy dates to get her to like Christmas more, because that's a big thing about this book, is that she doesn't really like Christmas because her family is the worst. Her family is very toxic, and so she doesn't have any emotional attachment to the holiday, and so Colton is trying to share his love of Christmas with her. So that is going to be it for all of my Christmas romance recommendations. I would love it if you would leave a comment down below if you guys have even more Christmas romance recommendations, or just winter holiday Christmas recommendations. If you also have Hanukkah romances or Kwanzaa or anything like that, I would love to get those recommendations as well, because I haven't heard of many romances that center around holidays other than Christmas, you know, around the winter time. So yeah, just give me your recommendations for myself and for other people that are watching this video. I really appreciate it. I would also love it if you would leave a like and subscribe, and I thank you so much in advance if you do, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!